In this video, we're going to look at how a government can try and resolve the negative externality of pollution. In this specification, we have the 4 types of pollution: visual, noise, air, and water. And then we have also suggested intervention, such as taxation, subsidy, regulation, fines, pollution permits, and provision of government parks. Obviously, there are more and other ways to stop pollution or help reduce pollution. Here we have a 12-mark question focusing on pollution permits. But as we know, with the 12-mark question, you're going to have to bring in not only analysis of pollution permits, but other ways that the government can reduce pollution. So the question relates to pollution permits. When your teacher taught you about pollution permits, they would have also taught you about these other ways to deal with pollution, other ways to deal with the negative externality of pollution, or how to protect the environment. So these other 5 ways: taxations, subsidies, regulations, fines, and provision of parks. So I know that in my conclusion, I'm going to be discussing one of these as an alternative method or a combination of reasons. Taxation could be used. You can see here in the graphs that taxation could be used, such as a carbon emissions tax, a green tax, an eco tax, however you'd like to, or government would like to name it. Putting the tax on the polluting, such as fossil fuels, will decrease the supply of fossil fuels and push the price up. This would also increase the demand for substitutes, such as renewable energies, you can see in this graph here. So a tax increases the cost of production, which will probably ultimately be passed on to the consumer and will decrease demand and also increase the demand for other alternatives, such as green energy. You could also have a tax when consumers arrive at airports, or a tourist tax, and then the money raised from these tax revenues can be used to subsidize green energy, can be used to subsidize education campaigns, to teach people about the positive externalities of looking after the environment. Subsidies can be used to decrease the cost of production and incentivize the production of certain items or services such as green electricity. I know in the United Kingdom that the government has also started to subsidize energy saving methods, such as installing smart meters into people's homes, so people are aware of how much electricity they're using, and so that can help reduce their costs that they spend on electricity, but also help reduce how much fossil fuels is burnt to make that electricity. Also, the installation of modern gas boilers, the installation of insulation in lofts as well, to keep heat into properties, into flats and into houses. So if the heat is kept in, then people don't need to use the heating for as long as possible. So then they obviously cut down on their bills as well. So the government can use subsidies to decrease the cost of production, which can then be passed on to consumers and help to reduce the use of polluting materials. An easy way for government to stop pollution is to implement regulations and fines. So for instance, over in Heathrow, planes are only allowed to fly at certain hours, I think it's sociable hours, and maybe the terminology, I don't know, maybe from 12 o'clock in the evening till 6 o'clock in the morning. So planes are only allowed to fly between that time to limit the noise pollution that it has on the residents below. And this is a regulation that they put in place. In Tanzania, when you go to Tanzania, you're not allowed to bring in plastic, single-use plastic. So they will take that off you at the border when they x-ray your bags and everything. Obviously, it takes a lot of hard work to implement, and other laws and regulations that they can put in place. And if businesses and if people break these laws, then they can have a fine for you, a financial fine. So they will penalize you. They will make you pay a fine. They'll make you pay money, which is obviously there to disincentivize certain behaviors. So regulations and fines. Governments can also use national parks. These don't have to just be on land. They can be in the sea as well, protecting coral reefs, protecting island, protecting fisheries. So the government can use national parks where only certain activities can take place, such as walking, hiking. Most national parks forbid the building of buildings, of industries happening in there. So these areas are designated national parks by the government where only certain activities can take place, and almost certainly activities that aren't polluting to the environment, activities that have negative externalities. So these are national parks where people can go exercise and feel the benefits of being in the countryside or being in the sea and see the national environment. And there should be no pollution there because people are reminded all the time to take the pollution with them, leave nothing but footsteps, take only pictures. National park. Here's a quick recap on pollution permits. Pause the video and you can read through this description of pollution permits and why they might work. To conclude the answer, along with pollution permits, the government could use a combination of taxation. They could have a plastic tax, and the revenues for the plastic tax can then be used to subsidize their education campaign. The government could also use fines as well, fining hotels, fining tourists for the amount of waste they produce or if they drop litter. They could also have regulation in place, checking at the borders, what's in people's bags, what the tourists bring in, making sure they don't bring in single-use plastic. And again, as we said, they could have run an education campaign onto the benefits of looking after environments, also educating people how pollution destroys the environment and how actually people come to the Maldives to see the fantastic coral reefs that they have, the sharks, the manta rays as well, and that if they're littering, if they're leaving plastic on the beaches, this plastic is then going to go into the ocean, and then the sharks and the rays are going to eat it all, and it's going to destroy all the coral reefs as well, and not going to have tourism left. Okay, so combination of measures that the Maldivian government could use is how I would conclude this answer.